The 1971 to 78 Cadillac Eldorado was Cadillac's most successful Eldorado produced to date in their history. In its final model year in 1978, Cadillac sold almost 47,000 of these large-scale Eldorados. These lofty sales figures occurred despite the car's quite hefty $12,401 base price, and also during the time period in which General Motors was downsizing a significant portion of its lineup. More specifically, General Motors had significantly downsized its full-size car lineup across the Chevrolet, Pontiac, Olds, and Buick car lines, but this downsizing had not yet hit the large and supersized Eldorado, which still rode atop a 126-inch wheelbase, weighed in at 4,906 pounds, and measured 224 inches in overall length. For the 1979 model year, General Motors product planners decided that the Eldorado would go on a significant diet, shaving about 1,100 pounds in weight, 20 inches off in overall length, and 12 inches off of the former 126-inch wheelbase. It was thought by some to be a risky move, particularly for the buyers of these cars who often thought that larger was better. However, the 1976 to 79 Seville had proved that Cadillac could produce and successfully sell a vehicle that was significantly smaller than its counterparts and do so at elevated price levels. In fact, when the 1976 Seville came out, it carried a base price of $12,479 compared to the DeVille, whose base price was $9,067 in coupe form and $9,265 in sedan form. So the Seville had represented about a $3,200 price premium over the DeVille, and the car was significantly smaller, riding atop a 114-inch stretched Nova chassis, whereas the DeVille was riding atop a 130-inch wheelbase in the 1976 model year. The overall success of the Seville gave Cadillac confidence that it could sell small cars and do so at a profit as well as in volume. And the 1979 Eldorado would be patterned off of this mold. The car would also share for the first time its platform across not just the Toronado, but also the Buick Riviera, which would move to front-wheel drive for the 1979 model year. The 79 Eldorado would also share its platform with the Seville, which would move to this front-wheel drive chassis for the 1980 model year. Despite the car's significantly smaller size from its predecessor, General Motors engineers did want to endow the car with a number of special features and ensure that the buying public would perceive this car to truly be a Cadillac despite its smaller size. More specifically, General Motors would endow the 1979 Eldorado with its first ever four-wheel independent suspension. In front, the wheels would be sprung by torsion bars similar to previous generations of Eldorado, but the rear would now carry a fully independent suspension system sprung by coil springs, with the goal of helping the Eldorado become a better handler without sacrificing ride quality. On the styling side, Cadillac's design team, led by design chief Wayne Cady, who had also been the design chief for the 1971 Eldorado, penned a car that was much more svelte in form and trim, as well as inspired by the 67 Eldorado's hard creases. More specifically, Cadillac's design team would endow the 1979 Eldorado with quite a few of the 1967 Eldorado's design cues to give it that look of Cadillac heritage, but in a more modern package. Some of these design cues included the square wheel arches, thick vertical C-pillar, a vertical D-line, vertical rear tail lights, and giving the hood a so-called prow or somewhat of a rooftop appearance. The Eldorado would also share its windshield and cowl with the Riviera and Toronado, and would even share a hood with the 1980 to 85 Seville. Cadillac's design team tried to disguise the fact that the Eldorado and the Seville shared a hood by providing the Seville with a large cap over the grille, while the Eldorado did not have this cap. The look of that cap was borrowed by Cadillac chief designer Wayne Cady from a previous proposal he had done for the 1977 Buick Riviera. On the interior, a design team led by Chief Interior Designer Drew Hare redid the entire theme for the 1979 Eldorado, and it would be shared with the Seville for 1980. While the dash would indeed employ faux wood grain, as was typical even in luxury cars of the time, an emphasis was placed on using high-quality materials, including real stitching and rich trims. The cars also had a unique, especially hooded instrument cluster that helped reduce glare and gave the car a more intimate feel. The interior team would also come up with a unique way to help improve customer perceived quality, and that entailed outfitting the ends of the instrument panel with caps that were made in various sizes to help appropriately close the gap between the instrument panel and where that would overlap with the door panel. Interior stitching patterns were also quite rich for the 1979 Eldorado, especially if a customer opted for the extra cost Biarritz trim option, which not only provided a richer button-tufted interior, but also a stainless steel roof cap that harkened back to the Cadillac Eldorado Brougham of the late 1950s. Under hood, the Eldorado would lose its former 425 cubic inch Cadillac sourced V8 in favor of the Seville's engine from the 1979 model year, which is an Oldsmobile-sourced 350 cubic inch V8, albeit outfitted with electronic fuel injection. When coupled with the new turbohydromatic 325 transmission, this powertrain combination provided the Eldorado with relatively lively acceleration for the time period, although it would be considered quite slow by today's standards. As the years passed and the Eldorado continued its run through the 1985 model year, relatively minor changes were made to the car, including some slight changes to the grille treatment, and under hood a few changes were made as well. More specifically, for the 1980 model year, the Eldorado would eschew the former Oldsmobile 350 cubic inch V8 in favor of a newly downsized Cadillac-sourced 368 cubic inch V8. This engine would stick around for the 1980 model year, as well as 1981, in which year it would be outfitted with the now infamous V864 engine technology, which deactivated cylinders depending upon engine load. However, the real Achilles heel was introduced under hood in the Eldorado in the 1982 model year with the HT 4100 V8, which would stay with the Eldorado until it closed out its model year run in 1985. When all was said and done, the 1979 to 85 Eldorado became yet again the best-selling Eldorado in Cadillac's history, and by a pretty significant margin. Sales figures in the 1979 model year increased from the 78 Eldorado's 47,000 units to over 67,000 units, and the car would actually have its best sales years in its final 2 years of production, selling almost 75,000 units in 1984 and 74,000 units in 1985, proving the design team had not only penned a handsome vehicle, but one whose styling had endured throughout its lifetime and beyond. So what's it like to own one of these 79 to 85 Eldorados, and what would be my recommendation if you were to purchase one? Well, first I would say that the best model years for these are the 1979 to 81 model years because of the engines under hood. If you're going to get one of these Eldorados, ideally you don't want one with the HT 4100 V8. Those engines had a number of issues, everything from intake gaskets to head gaskets. They're not very powerful and don't have all that much torque relative to the Oldsmobile and Cadillac source V8s that preceded them. I will also say that these cars got progressively more complicated as the model years went on, featuring some new digital instrument technology and climate control systems. These tend to be relatively robust aside from the light segments burning out on the displays. It seems, though, that you can still find some NOS displays on eBay for reasonable prices. These digital displays also provide the car with a unique onboard diagnostic system that you can access by holding the off and warmer buttons together. This diagnostic setup allows you to check various engine sensors and their values to help better understand if you're having a drivability issue, what the cause is. I will also say that Cadillac's efforts to provide the 1979 Eldorado with a supremely quiet and stable ride really were successful. These cars are very quiet at speed on the inside. They handle relatively well for their size, certainly better than their predecessors. And they do have a really nice ride quality that's not too firm and not too soft. Overall, if you're looking to own a stylish piece of Cadillac history, the 1979 to 85 Eldorado can certainly be a good selection. My particular favorite are the touring coupes from these model years. Hope you enjoyed this feature on the 1979 Cadillac Eldorado. When former Cadillac chief designer Wayne Cady returns from sunnier weather in the springtime, we'll sit down with him again and talk about the design of this 1979 Eldorado as well as the touring coupe. Until that point, enjoy this video at the bottom left from Wayne talking about the design of the 1971 Eldorado, and also check out the video at bottom right of John Manoogian, then Cadillac's assistant chief designer, talking about the design of the subsequent 1986 Eldorado. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, take care.